one in two sides. This is the first year I did. They were, yeah, I mean, I love it, of course, I like this, but there's a couple of.
Okay, so well done.
Yeah, besides that.
Like I said, Megan James is going to come in just a minute, so I'll have her introduce herself when she gets here. This is our fourth session. Here's a handout, and I will send you all, I just didn't want to print them all, the info behind this, right? So it's so you could try to take yourself through and take you to the gym and talk to a trainer. Or you might end up having an appointment with someone.
I'm a 9.5.
How do we start moving better?
I wear large.
But today, you know, I think we think with the Run for Women, we think about exercise, we think about cardio. And in this whole Freedom program concept I wanted to get to is a lot of the things that we need to be thinking about to live a better, stronger life and have a better health span versus lifespan. I just did a thing online that said, based on my family history and input that I put in, I'm going to live till 93.3. So, how do I want to live until I'm 93? You know, what do I want to be able to do at age 90? What do I want to be able to do at age 80? Well, I better be doing stuff right now because I'm 60, and that's not that far off. So, you know, I'm very focused on that and trying to take knowledge that I've learned and then gather really good knowledge from the area and then provide it to people so that we can all be doing whatever we can do right now to live better. I'm going to have these guys introduce themselves. We have 3 doctors with us, and I like saying that all the time, and I'm not going to stop saying it because my son will have his doctorate, and I'm so proud, in May. So there is a difference, and maybe we can talk a little bit about this too, because there's occupational therapists, there's physical therapists, there's chiropractors, there's, you know, Katie's brother is in functional medicine. Like there's so many different avenues now, and maybe you guys want to talk a little bit about that too, so that people can understand, because they should be looking at it. And one of the things I've been kind of talking with my son about, prehab versus rehab, right? So hopefully none of us are actively injured right now. Your hand, I don't know.
No, this is a condition I have.
Ongoing, yeah. But as you can see, I don't move the way I could move, right? So what could we be doing now so that, God forbid, something does happen, we're better off, and we're just moving as well as we can move. So Allison, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes.
Good. Zakowski. I am a PT, Florida's PT, which is composed in Saratoga. I've been a PT in the area for 16 years, I think it is now. And I have always kind of been in the orthopedic side of things. I'm an orthopedic clinical specialist. And yeah, I work with people of all ages. And we're a few that were here before. I think it's like, for the people I see, it's not necessarily, I do focus a lot on ACLs and knees in general in my practice, but I see everybody with anything, and the people I see, it's definitely mindset is what sets people apart. It's the mindset of, I want to keep moving. I don't want to stop. I was told I couldn't squat anymore, like, so I want, like, how do I live my life if I can't squat? And we kind of break down barriers behind that. And then, similar to what Kristen was saying, just kind of preach that longevity for anybody, whether it's a 16-year-old that has a knee injury, or it's an 80-year-old that is, you know, trying to stay functionally independent. You know, what are, I'm sure we'll get into them, but what are the key things that we need to do to keep that functional independence forever, and keep athletic forever?
I'm Katie Mars. I am a PT and owner of Resolute Physical Therapy. I focus mostly on women's health through all ages. I have a specialty in pregnancy postpartum. I have pelvic floor specialties, and then I teach an osteoporosis weightlifting class, and that's kind of where I'm coming for you guys today, learning about how to strengthen your bones, not from just medicines. There's other natural things that you can do. You guys are all here because you're healthy, active individuals. So there's a way that you can specifically train to improve your bone density. And we've seen really good success on DEXA scans and blood tests.
again, I guess where I'm coming at this from is there's always information out there, and I think there's a lot of myths, or maybe things that maybe we thought at one point in time, like running prevents, it builds bone.
It does, but a lot of runners do have osteoporosis. So as runners, the pattern that you're doing, the repetitive stepping that you're doing is forming bone in one dimension. So our bones are formed by a network of crisscrossing collagen fibers. So if you're only training one direction and not hitting all the other directions, you might not actually be building your bone density. 70 to 80% of your diagnosis of osteoporosis is based on genetic factors. So if your mom or your grandmothers have osteoporosis, then you are automatically at a higher risk for having it. There's other things like lifestyle factors or childhood medications that you might be on, activity or inactivity that you did growing up are also other factors for osteoporosis. But the main thing that I see in practice is you go to your provider, you get a DEXA scan. They might tell you, okay, we'll stop and wait. You have osteopenia, but don't worry, it's not osteoporosis yet, but we know it's a progressive condition. So they might not even put you on medication at that point in time. They might just be a wait and see. As we age, our hormones change. And the thing that keeps the bone remodeling process in check is estrogen. So we see this rapid decline in estrogen post-menopause, and that's when most of our osteopenia and osteoporosis comes out. So if they catch you with your first DEXA and you have osteopenia and you just hit menopause, then you're likely going to decline pretty rapidly, but they don't do a repeat DEXA for 2 years. So if you don't address it at that first meeting or make any lifestyle changes at that first meeting, the next time you go in, it will likely have progressed. So there's different practitioners out there that instead of just doing DEXA scans, they're starting to look at blood markers or urine markers. These tests look at the 2 different main cells in your bone remodeling process. So when we're little, our bones are like nice and malleable. So as we age, they start to remodel and harden. So there's 2 main cells involved. There's osteoclasts. They break down the bone. Osteoblasts build the bone. Normally, they're in that nice homeostatic balance, but with age, then the osteoclasts, because your estrogen dropped, start to skyrocket, and they break down your bone. Your osteoblasts typically stay the same. There's not much that changes that. So the medication you get put on stops the osteoclasts from increasing further, but nothing addresses the osteoblasts. That's where strength training comes into play. So if we can stop the osteoclasts from going up, and if we can build the osteoblasts through activity, now we start to get more homeostasis back into your system.
I think there's a huge discrepancy with what the medical field is doing and where the research is, and that's a common theme of PTs that we preach a lot of that, because there's people that are told from their providers not to lift weights because it's dangerous, and we just really swallow hard when we hear that. So I think there's a huge discrepancy in that, and I think another side to that, which Katie alluded to, is that osteopenia is the bone, and what nobody is talking about is sarcopenia, which is the muscle. So sarcopenia, I think, maybe in our lifetime will become maybe a little bit more looked at than the osteopenia, or at least together, because the muscles pull on the bones. And when you pull on something, there's a good old thing we learned called Wolff's Law, and it's just your body responds to the forces placed upon it. If you don't put force on it, it's not going to respond. So if you don't pull at the bone with your tendons and with your muscles, there's no reason for that bone to build, to stimulate those osteoblasts. So when you get to that point, you know, the amount of lean muscle tissue, I think as a medical field, we need to be looking at more, and strength training, and there's things that are out there, that are getting better at looking at that, and people, you know, having the knowledge to look at that, but that's not being talked about much at all. So I think those are two major things, and then, you know, the major thing we don't talk about with muscles is that after the age of 30, we do lose our 1% of our potential. So I always say the potential because
That's a nice way.
it's a nice way to say it, because like who here was at their ultimate fitness peak at 30, right? Like, I mean, I was probably at like 25, and then, you know, kind of stopped playing sports for a minute, had some kids, and, you know, went through a lot of things, and, right? And so then, you know, by, you know, at 30, I'm in better shape now at 41 than I was at 30, just because of lifestyle choices and learning to eat better and learning how it impacts how I feel and all of those things. So, you know, you lose that potential, but you can always gain. You can always gain bone. You can always gain muscle. So, you know, I think those are major things that aren't talked about. I think in the running groups specifically, I don't want to steal your thunder, you have some. But you know, bones, we see issues with kids that have ran because of fuel issues. So if you are developing, you know, osteoporosis, you know, there is very well could be a fuel issue as well, meaning you're not getting enough food or good food for your body. And our bodies draw from our bones and from our menstrual cycles as two major issues. So when our young girls are losing their periods when they're running, it's a major issue because it's affecting the estrogen, and then it's affecting their long-term issues. And I can't tell you how many people don't ask those. And I'm sure some of you guys have kids and grandkids or whomever that are running, but I can't, like you guys, I'm sure hear it a ton. You know, you have a kid that comes in and nobody has asked them about their menstrual cycle because maybe it's a little uncomfortable. But if people are losing their periods and people are losing bone, that's a major trigger that there's a fuel issue that's not being allowed to rebuild their body.
Oh, I keep going before I let you introduce yourself, just because I feel like it's always been, I learned before you were born. I think she's the youngest. You know, that running was good for your bones. That's, you're golden if you do that. Strength training is better for your bones.
It's multi-directional. So running is the same muscles, the same direction. You have to react here and there, but pretty much if you're on the road, you know you're just going straight. So yes, are you better off than somebody sedentary? Yes. Are you better off bone density wise than a cyclist, a pure cyclist, or a swimmer? Yes. Is the gymnast probably better off than you? Yeah. Yeah. So training differently will help build more density surrounding everything. The biggest part is the femoral neck. So bone structure wise, you have head of the femur, the neck comes out to the side, and then the femur comes down. So this side portion, it prevents the bone from like bending. So runners typically have stronger necks of the femur, but not as strong like lower back bone area, just because of the stresses put upon the femur when you're running. So your sport does kind of determine where you might be at higher risk for the osteoporosis. So,
Does anybody know if they're equal on both sides with their osteopenia?
most times they only test one side. They'll test one side.
Really? Oh,
Yep.
I got both tested then.
I have
You're lucky.
And I
Yeah.
have osteoporosis on one side, but osteopenia on the other.
On the other side, okay.
We only
Yeah.
tested one side of mine.
Wow, why would they do that?
That's a great question, because nobody's
It
equal
costs
both
money?
sides.
Well, it gave you a cortisone shot or,
Yeah.
fun. Or that's
I I think the other thing with running is it's like the progressive load. Strengthening is about progressive load. It's about lifting 5 pounds today and 7 pounds next week and 8 pounds the following week, and maybe you come back down to 6 and then you go back up to 12, but there's always a forward progression. Running, your progression is speed or hills, right? So like, I feel like when people start running, there's this nice big increase in strength if they haven't been doing anything, but then you plateau because you're not challenging the muscle further beyond what it can do. And then so that if you are a runner and you are running forever and you're not strength training, and that 1% every year is coming off because you're not strength training, eventually that strength dips below your capacity of what you need to run, and then you start to get pains when you're running. So I think that's a major thing, is the strength training's progressive load. And then I think from like the well-being side, and this might, dovetail into others, is, the physical activity guidelines are 30 to 60 minutes of cardiovascular fitness most days, 5 days a week at least, 150 to 300 minutes a week, 2 days of resistance training, and overall reduction of of sedentary lifestyle. So those 3 things have shown to reduce all-cause mortality of everything, of heart disease, of cancers, of any fall risks, of anything. So sometimes if you're looking at where to start or what to add in to stay healthy, that's where I kind of fall back on, is the cardio. Runners, walkers, they get cardio, but they don't get the other sides of strength training, or they do the run in the morning and then sit down all day. And that's sedentary lifestyle, unfortunately, even if you are a runner. Like, you've got to move throughout the day. So I always come back to those because it's fascinating how much it reduces the risk of every cause of mortality possible.
Yeah. Megan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay, well, some of you have seen before. I was here in December, I think, with Teresa. I'm Megan James. I'm also a physical therapist. I have my own practice working with runners. I coach runners, adult runners, and I also coach high school cross country and track at Burn Hills. And I'm a runner myself, so I'm coming at running in a lot of different angles. I used to work with Allison actually, like way back at my first job, so it's kind of cool to be sitting next to her on in this panel. Yeah, so I do a lot of things running related. I love running. I like talking about bone health. That's been a big topic lately. Yeah.
Well, I think it's super important because, like, Megan, obviously, she's got the high school girls, right? So she's seeing that on a regular basis. Hopefully, no stress fractures on our teams, but it happens, right? Because we can't control what the girls are eating or how much they're sleeping, and but I think we never had the information that she is giving to her team. They are so lucky to have that, right? So if we think about, because of the age of the group here, that's when you're still on the rise. You can build bone, you can build muscle, it's not all downhill. And when the girls are depressed at practice, I'm always like, just wait, this is the best time of your life. College will be good too, and then after that, it's all downhill. So stop looking so mopey. But so we're working with the girls when they're going through all the hormonal changes, when we're all like either going through it or through it. What does that mean for us, right? Like, how many people have done strength training for their entire life? Or like, let's even say, since they were in their 20s. I have.
Me on and off.
Good. That's pretty good, I think. Right?
That's
Like, yeah, because I don't think that's the norm, right? We didn't know we were
The women
supposed
in your
to stay.
generation are not like
Right, because it was always,
50
you're gonna
above.
get bulky and you're gonna get
Right.
this and,
Yes.
don't do it. So what are the things that we ought to be thinking about now? Two, if we can improve our bone health, at least maintain muscular health, like what's really important that each of you?
I think working on something explosive is really important. That's getting into these higher loads on your bones and on your muscles. You're generating a lot of force. So something like box jumps, or jumping off of a box onto the floor, doing some zigzag hopping, maybe jumping rope controlled and not so scary as looking at a wooden box in front of you that you have to land on somehow. But that, like Allison was saying, as we lose that potential every year, we also lose that explosiveness. And that is related to our reaction time. So if you slip on the sidewalk when it's icy, or you trip on a carpet in your house, can you react? Are you able to just get your feet back under you? If you can't, then we're looking at a fall, then you're potentially fracturing a bone or hitting your head, or just something isn't gonna feel good because you just fell. So being able to do some explosive training, the plyometrics, coming out of a squat with a little bit more power, that I think is really helpful in training the muscles and the bones and your reaction and coordination time.
So for me, I think like one of the major things I talk about is just starting small, because I think a lot of people try to jump into a workout class. Most of us, I'm the same, 95% of us don't have like internal motivation of, all right, my kids kept me up all night, I'm up at 6, so I'm going to work out, I'll do it, and then I'll be like, okay, I got to sleep today, right? So I think, we all kind of, a lot of people like the group or like some type of accountability, and then people go to a group and it's just too much, and then you get too sore, or something starts hurting, or something where, when we give people exercises, sorry if I'm speaking for you guys, correct me if I'm wrong with you guys, but it might give you like 2 to 3 things to work on. Like, let's get these going really well, and let's make them specific to what your goals are. So if you came in and it's getting up off the ground, and you came in and it's picking up grandkids, and then we tailor those to what your most immediate goal is, or tailor things to that. So I think like starting small, and then, in recognizing signs, like if you do have trouble getting to the floor, that's a sign of muscle weakness. So getting to the floor and getting off the floor, if you can't do that, that is functional independence, and that's a sign of muscle weakness. If you trip over the rug and you're like, oh my God, I almost went down, right? Like, we all have those moments, but if it was more than what you usually do, like, that should alert you that maybe I can improve some of these things. For the jumpy stuff, I'm not gonna steal your thunder, because a lot of women stop it because of pelvic floor things. Or like, I can't jump, or like even those that are in the gym, like, oh, I don't wanna jump because I'm gonna have some issues. So I think it's like recognizing why you stopped something. Is it challenging? Did something hurt? Did somebody tell you that you can never, I always kind of bring it up, and never squat again because you have arthritis of your knees? That is just such a myth that we hear. We're made to move. So if anybody is ever saying, or you're feeling that your movement is narrowing, that's a sign that you really should be getting into some type of multi-directional training.
One client that I worked with maybe like 4 years ago now, she was in her 60s at the time when I worked with her, and every year on her birthday she climbed up on her kitchen counter just to make sure she could still do it. And that was just something that she decided as she got older, like, I need to make sure that I can still get up on the counter safely and just like reach an upper cabinet or something. But she's like, crawl up on the counter and get back down, and I was like, well, that's a great idea. I like that.
There's actually a PT, I was listening to a podcast, it was just about getting on the ground every day for 30 minutes. And don't even do anything, just get on the ground and see what happens. Because what happens when you're on the ground? We fidget, we move, we kind of do the shin box, we kind of move, we kind of, and then they're like, well, put a foam roller next to you, and like start to move that. Oh, this feels good to stretch like that. Okay, great. And so being able to get on the ground, being able to get on the kitchen cabinet, good old Turkish get ups. Yeah.
I'd add a balance component. So, runners, you're using momentum to keep going, so you don't ever really have to like stop and be stable and be still. So like Megan was saying about, if you fall, you're at a higher risk for fracture, and fractures can kind of be that thing that sets you way back. So I heard one person say like the leading cause of death is a fracture, because if you're taking your ability, now you have to heal from the fracture. If you don't work your way back up, it's just a series of slow decline. So if we can prevent the fall in the first place, I would love to do that. So anything where you're on one leg, reaching outside of your base of support with a weight or your hand, closing your eyes, standing on foam, those are all great like internal balance activities. I work with people and I'm really mean and I try to push them and see if they can react. I have them put resistance bands around each other and give a couple yanks. Can they react? Great, that's perfect. I've had plenty of stories of people say, Katie, you know, I slipped on ice, I caught myself this time because of all the training you've done. So it's easy to do. Stand on one foot brushing your teeth. I'm a pelvic floor PT, so when you're on one leg, your pelvic floor activity goes up. So right there, you're working on pelvic floor strengthening too. So it's a 2-for-1. Why not?
I think one thing to keep in mind, if you fall, or not if you fall, if you get injured, let's say you hurt your knee and you can't run or you can't walk, but there's a lot of other things that you can do for your upper body, for your back, for your other leg, that so you're not getting as much of that decline in the time of an injury. If you haven't built up much of reserve as a teenager and young adult in your bones and your muscles, that can go pretty quickly. So if you're able to maintain it even when you're injured, or if you're sick, you do something is better than nothing, that will help you recover faster and be able to return to the level that you were at before. One thing that when I worked in, I covered per diem shifts in nursing facilities, and our goals were to get people back to their prior level of function. Well, their prior level of function was falling 3 times a week. That's not great. We want to get them back to better than their prior level of function, so they're not coming back into the rehab facility. And that insurance doesn't totally agree with that, but that was always our goal, even if it wasn't written as such. We kind of have to work the system a little bit, but yeah, prior level of function, we want to do better. We just want to do better.
I think the stats of hip fractures, I'll be grim for a minute, are 1/3 go home, 1/3 go to a nursing home, and 1/3 pass away pretty quickly. That's the stats, like it's real. So it's scary. I believe that's over 60 years old that research is done at. So it is scary. And as Megan, went to the functional reserve, the best analogy I have of that is it's like a savings account. Sometimes you pull in, sometimes you put out. The more you put in younger, yes, it's bigger when you're older. But you can always start, right? So as long as you build it up, when something happens, I don't believe in prevention. I believe in prevention. But I believe more in risk reduction than prevention, because if something is going to happen to us, whether we're active or sedentary, doesn't matter. I would rather personally be active and stay active as long as I can, to stop, the decline of being sedentary for a little bit, for whatever, 4 weeks, 8 weeks that you have to be. So, so if you think about it as a bank account, it's never too late to start to save, but it's, you're gonna pull from it and then you gotta put it in. But if you heat it off when you're hurt by continuing to build something or continuing to work something, then you're gonna, stop that bleed earlier than if you do nothing.
So how, if people are sitting here, I'm gonna let you guys ask questions. Please, cause I'll just keep asking, but I'm thinking, I do a fair bit, right? But I think I could do a better job with as I say, the prehab, moving better. I kind of want okay, if my body actually moves the way it's supposed to move, what can I do? So how does the average person kind of know I'm good to go from where I am right now and I can start doing this stuff, or I should be coming to see you guys because I need help getting to the point to move the way I should move, to do things, to add in strength training and maybe more running or more walking and, do that safely too.
We all go to a yearly physical where our doctor kind of checks our blood numbers, our weight, seeing how things change. I don't think most people know that you can just go see a PT if you want to see a PT. We are experts in the musculoskeletal system. we break down how you move, how your strength is side to side, how is your mobility side to side. You do not need to come see us because you have a problem. You could come see us just to see what's going on with your body. So I would say starting there. Start and just get like a before picture. You feel good now? Let's see what you look like before. You can always come back down the line. If something develops, that's where we work with you. The other thing about PT, no PT clinic is the same. So we're all in a certain clinic right now because we didn't like where we were before, or the constraints.
And we were all in the same clinic at one point.
We
so.
were. We were. So we all work with people one-on-one. You won't see 3 or 4 people working with the same therapist. So if you do choose to go see a PT, make sure you do your research and you find the physical therapist that works with you. You might love Allison and you might hate me, and that's okay. You just need to find the right provider for you. So
Yes, cause I hear that all the time. People are like, I went to PT and it didn't work.
Yeah.
No, PT will work, you just didn't find the right person.
Yeah, and we can make you better than you are, not because there's something wrong, but we can always find something. We're really good at finding those little things.
Well, and I think because I've, scoliosis in grade school, back brace in high school, taken out of gym, 2 back surgeries, blah, blah, blah. So I've been to PT my entire life, and I think it's not just what you do, it's the homework. If you don't do the homework and keep it up,
Yeah.
because I didn't do the homework.
Mhm.
You do it, you're gonna,
Mhm.
So I think it's just religiously staying with the program that you guys prescribe.
Yeah, I generally don't see my clients a lot, a couple visits. I rely a lot on doing your homework, and most of them, almost all of them are very good because it's something that, like, they're seeking me out because they want to run or they want to, mostly run. They want
That's
to
a
run.
big deal.
Yeah. So that's something that's really important to them, so they're gonna do whatever it takes to get there. It's very different from like the clinics that we were in before. Well, I hurt my shoulder at work and I have to be here because I'm told to come. And it's like, oh, okay, so this is a limitation here. So if you find the right person you're working with, you have a very clearly defined goal, that's gonna be much easier for you to invest that time. And it might be 3 minutes a day of a simple exercise. It might be 15 minutes. When people start doing like 45, 50 minutes of PT exercise, I'm like, go live your life. But generally, it's not a ton. We want to give you like the 2 to 3 things, like Allison said, that are really gonna drive home the most, the most bang for your buck, really, out of those. So, yeah, finding the right person, and yeah, we can do a physical. If you're really physical with your primary, you do it with your dentist, you do it with your eye doctor, you do it with a PT too.
So I was just gonna say, so
Yes.
you both, you are a little bit, we're a cash-based practice.
Yeah.
So we don't work with insurances because our healthcare system sucks, right? So we have just broke away from that, which allows us to operate the way that we do now, which is one-on-one, we have weights, we pay attention, we're not nervous to load you if it's appropriate because we can see you and coach you and do all of that. It isn't cheap either, right? So there's a cost to it. The thing I love to promote is what's next, right? Is it an osteoporosis class? Because that becomes cost effective, right? That's community-based treatment by professionals. Is it to a personal trainer? Is it, and that's a major thing for us, that we network with a lot of personal trainers, and it's like, okay, well, I know your personality and this person is really awesome. So, could you get there? Could you get into a small group setting where you have accountability and it feels like home, where you can do that and meet those physical activity guidelines, right? So if we have 2 or 3 exercises, which we all preach, and I've said it first too, is that's awesome, and that might be something that starts you. But are we hitting the 30 to 60 minutes of cardiovascular, and are we hitting 2 really good resistance days? The resistance stuff, I live in squat, lunge, push, pull, carry. If you think about your daily life, and walk. those 5 or 6 things pretty much cover the scope of what you're gonna do in a day. So in a fitness program, I believe those should all be in for us to kind of get the most out of our life. But I think that bridged the gap too, like, so a lot of trainers are also testing things on a regular basis. Hey, you started squatting at 10 pounds, now you're squatting at 40 pounds. How amazing is that? You know, so we call them key performance indicators, like, are you changing? Personal trainers do that too. Sometimes I laugh at myself for being a terrible business person, because I do that too, but, you know, again, from a cost-effective side, you know, the community stuff, there are gyms that do testing regularly for people. And I think, you know, so if you're lost and not finding something, sometimes starting with us is a good idea, and then it's like, well, how can you sustain it? Do you need that group? Is there a group class where you're going? Is there a group class of somebody, a friend, that fits what you like and how you feel? And the same goes true for that. If you find one place and you don't like it, move on. You find a doctor that doesn't jive with you, with what they're not listening to you, move on. Because there's providers, there's doctors, PTs, chiropractors that will listen to what your goals are and push you forward. So I think that's the big thing for me, is like always kind of coming back to those physical activity guidelines, and how can we set you up to hit those for your lifestyle. Some people, it's micro breaks during the day, and it's 3 15-minute sessions of exercise, or the 2 to 3 exercises, but a few times to really build your volume and build your reserve.
It's just interesting when you originally said, like, if you run in the morning, then you sit at work all day, that's sedentary, and I'm thinking to myself, I do all my workouts in the morning. So, and then I sit all day. So what would you recommend, like that, like how do I close out the day so I?
So what's your
quit
watch
that
tell you?
tired?
Does your watch tell you every hour to stand up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's got a stand
Yeah, I
goal.
do get my stand
Yeah,
goals,
right, so the
but-
stand goals, your total steps in a day, I think. I mean, if you're a runner, you're gonna crush those in the beginning of the day, yes, but, or if you go for your walk, you might get your 8,000 in the morning and be like, okay, 2,000 to go. Like, no, like, you should get up and move. You know, I think micro breaks are a major thing for that, just little bits of movement.
Yeah, there's an interesting NPR article, which I can forward to, so you can circulate it, where she did the woman, I forget her background, but did a test over a period of months. Every 25 minutes religiously, she got up and moved, and then she tested her blood sugar was lower, her
Yep.
cardiovascular was better, and some other marker. And then, so she created kind of a whole podcast thing around here, and it's pretty fascinating, because it's very simple, right? Get up every 25 minutes,
Yep.
but also gives you that information that shows, oh yeah, it actually really does.
The benefits of walking are high,
Mhm.
and runners also don't walk. They don't. Yeah, so sometimes, like, runners who are running 45 miles a week, you know, I'm like, how much are you actually going for a brisk walk? Because that keeps our toes and our ankles, and that keeps our hips stride longer, that, you know, like a city walk, like a big walk. You know, and they're like, well, I walk the dog. I'm like, well, there's a stop, and there's a pull, and there's a do this. Like, I want you to walk and go, you know, so, and those are the studies, lower blood sugar, right? So again, like, if we think about hitting those guidelines, diabetes, cancers, all things that come back to a lot of this stuff, walking is really, I'll call it queen, you know, it's really the thing that so many people are missing. And like, I hit 10,000 steps a day, but it's not by a regular walk.
Mhm.
It's just because I'm on my feet and walking and moving, you know, but I'm still need to go walking.
So when you say walking, what pace are you talking about, or what?
I call it a city walk.
Fast,
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a city, like you're going in Manhattan and you're trying to get somewhere. It's not
trying to
a,
get to the bus.
Right.
like, you know,
But is
like,
that for 5 minutes or 20 minutes, or, I mean, if you're already.
whatever. If it's every 25 minutes, it could be for 5 minutes, you know?
That's
And
what- that's
it's,
kind of what that.
yeah, so I think it's the breakup of that monotony
Mm.
of sitting, or, you know, of the run in the morning and then stationary, like, get up and go, and it, because those benefits are really high.
It's interesting.
And
I also notice a huge difference when I take like the micro breaks, because I'm at home working, right? So I have micro breaks all the time. Too many of them are to the kitchen. But the more I do that, the less I'm like creaky when I get up.
Yeah.
When I sit for a while, I'm like,
very structured like that. Every 20 minutes I'm up moving, every hour I'm up moving. It's great in theory, sometimes that's not life. You have a day, you're visiting a friend or a relative like in the hospital, you're just sitting there for a few hours. Okay, it happens. Or there's a day that you just are sick and you don't wanna do anything except lay on the couch and read or watch TV, fine. But most days, most of the time, you're up and you're moving frequently. When I'm, on the days that I'm working at home, I'll take like a trip to the kitchen, and then I come back and I work, and then a half hour later, it's a trip to the bathroom, and then a half hour later, it's back to the kitchen again, and I just go back and forth and let the dog out, and so I'm up for like a minute or two at the time, but I'm always up. Yeah, I get very antsy just sitting.
Speaking of compound weightlifting. So, like, I'll go to this class, good class, everywhere I go, but, like, because she'll have us squatting, okay, I can squat 20, 30, whatever, and then she'll have me do a press. I can't press, the amount of weight I can squat is not, but I can press, so I stick with the squat. I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna do the squat, and when you tell me to do a press, I'll do the press with that weight. You know, what's the, is it, yeah, just what are your thoughts?
I think it depends on what you're going for. What are your
I'm trying
goals?
to lift heavy stuff. I'm trying to
Then you shouldn't combine.
You should not combine.
Right, right?
To make a difference on your bone density, you guys heard of a 1 rep max? So a 1 rep max is how heavy you can lift one time. How heavy can you do one squat where if you attempted a second one, you would fail? All the research says to make changes to your bone density, you have to work at 80% or higher of your 1 rep max. So that's heavy. Nobody can lift the same for a squat and an overhead
I know,
press.
right, so I'm like.
So you should not be doing that. You should probably up your squat
I probably could.
and maybe bring down the overhead press.
Right, so I don't even do the overhead press, I'm like, you know what?
But it's a good for coordination, so you're getting that piece of it, so again, it depends on what your goal is.
Yeah, my goal is the lift heavy stuff.
Or if there's a cardio component, like
Yeah,
if they're
she
trying
does-
to
she
do, if
does.
it's like a HIIT class,
Yeah,
so
she
if,
does, yeah, like.
right, the compound movements get your heart rate up more, and they do, there's a time and place, it's exactly what Kate said, what's your goal?
But then what would you advocate for our age group?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
But it's
So
Okay, so
you
let's-
guys are getting heavy.
Again, chime in, cause you know, my big thing is grip strength.
That's another thing.
I get the heavy weights, I'm like, okay, I can't hold on to it
We
anymore.
go deadlift,
Yeah,
For us,
you
guys understand.
deadlift,
Yeah.
you do farmer's carry, which is just a really heavy hold by one side, hang from a bar. There's a whole lot of grip strength.
So
things
talk
that
about
you can do.
hanging and the value of hanging.
Hanging is great
well.
for a whole lot of
I
different
don't
things.
anymore.
I think you're referring to decompression.
No, I just even mean like, I was hanging, cause when we first, 2 years ago, when I was like, I'm hell bent on getting people healthier, I was like, let's do the hang test. So I videotaped myself doing the hang test, and I'm hanging and I'm happy. And then I tore my rotator cuff, which my son says we all have torn rotator cuffs. And so then, I
Your
had to
load was too
rehab
much.
that. But now it's like, I suck at hanging. It's really bad. If you don't do something, you really become bad at it.
Yep, so grip strength is a key indicator for, aging also.
Yeah.
Because when you slip and you reach out to grab something, if you can hold on to it, you're not gonna fall. If you can't hold on to it, you're probably going to fall because you can't hold your body up. So that's one huge thing that we address in my osteo class is grip strength. We heavy deadlift, we heavy carry, we hang from a bar. We do all of these things for grip strength too. So there's a lot of different things, and it depends on who you go to for help. There are people who are fitness minded, and then there's people who are medical minded. So the things that I program in my osteo class are for osteo. So when I get the woman who comes in that wants to lose weight and look better, I say, this is not for you. This class is not programmed for you. This is programmed to lift heavy, do it safely, be with a doctor of physical therapy that can modify any movement to not hurt you in the process. So it's finding what are your goals and who's gonna help you get there.
And the class stuff, I mean, I have a lot of people that stay in classes because they like them. They like the community, they like the class, but I think it's either, like if I have somebody, it's a conversation with that, like, hey, what's your name? Eleanor. Eleanor is gonna just lift heavier with her squats because this is what we're focusing on. So if you see her doing that, just let her be, you know, or again, you might just tell that to them. So you can, but I think a lot of that does come down to knowing your body and what are your goals. Like if you, I mean, lifting overhead is equally as important, not as, but it is really important. You know, from again, independence, grabbing stuff, moving stuff, holding stuff, picking stuff up, picking things up, picking people up, like whatever we need to do. So it is important too, and we don't want that to go to the wayside. But again, in order to build strength, it needs to be progressive and work from, you know, 65, 70% of load to 90 and then back down, and you're kind of progressively loading that, and then your base is a different start. So your 70% that you started again is now higher. It was 90 pounds that you were starting, now it's 100 pounds. And then that's the idea of like progressive load behind that. So I mean, I think finding a place where modifications are accepted or understood. You know, some places are very much like, go lift heavier. Like, no, you need the heavier weight. Like, no, I don't. Like, if I go to a class, I also live my own life. Like, I kind of do my own thing because I know my body extremely well. So if I don't want to do something, it's not because I'm being a jerk. It's because it doesn't feel right to me, or I haven't pressed 40 pounds in 3 months, so I'm not gonna go back to 40 right now. I'm gonna start at 26, and I'm gonna go up, and then, you know, move it. So don't be shy to modify.
Oh, no, I should have quick comments.
Yeah.
Food, fuel, what do we need to do all this? Because I've heard, okay, after menopause, we need all that protein. So how do you recommend, you know, dealing with the need to fuel all that so we can lift?
You need carbs. Your bones love carbs, and a lot of times, like, these low carb diets, like the keto diet, you're very restrictive on your carbs, and people, I lost so much weight, I feel great. Cool, you just lost your muscle mass and your bone mass.
Wow.
So, great. You won't feel great in a few years. So, yeah, you need carbs. Yeah, you need carbs, you need fat, you need protein, you need water. You need all of it, you need a balance of it. I work pretty closely with a dietitian, so I don't do a ton of nutrition counseling. It's not really in our scope as PTs, but I talk about it with my athletes, with my high school athletes. And I eat like every 2 hours throughout the day. My high school athletes are a little more restricted because they can't eat in some classrooms, or they can't eat certain foods in some classrooms. We can't eat on the bus, so when we go from the end of the school day and they eat in lunch at 11 a.m. and then we have a meet at 4 o'clock, but they can't eat on the bus, that's 5 hours, and then they're trying to race, and then they're wondering, well, why did I feel so terrible? Well, you have nothing in your tank right now. So, yes, you do need protein, and that helps to build up muscle, and especially in response to heavy exercise, but you need the carbs and you need the fats to help. They all work together in absorbing each other and being more readily utilized in your system. So, yeah, I don't really give any specific guidance on like this many grams per kilogram. Just trying to get a balance of everything. If you eat so much protein, you're gonna feel very full, and then you don't have room for the carbs and the fat, but you're missing those key nutrients. So it's a balance.
Yeah, I'm definitely quality is in what you're eating is important. Protein does make you feel full, so if weight loss is a goal, protein is good, but you do need your healthy fats and you do need your carbs. Carbs are brain fuel. So if you are feeling foggy and you haven't eaten, it's because your brain is lacking glucose and lacking sugar. And then what do most people do? Like grab a sugar, eat something, right? And then boom, right to the brain. They feel good. So if you are eating consistently, like, I know there's stuff about fasting, I'm in between. I actually personally like fasting. I don't think it's right for everybody. I have a girlfriend who's about 95 pounds and needs to gain weight, and she's like, what about fasting? I'm like, never, never fast. What are you doing? You're tanking because you're like starving yourself, right? So it depends. I think in general for women, the individuals I work with that are well more trained than me are definitely, the frequent meals. High protein is good. The FDA regulations on high protein, I strongly believe, are way too low. And if you actually sit down and tally your protein, most people are extremely low. So you're probably not even hitting what the FDA says. So that's where the protein focus comes in, I think, is because historically, like, you sit with somebody, you're like, well, what did you eat? Well, I had an egg and bacon for breakfast. Okay, great. The egg is 6 grams of protein, and 1 piece of bacon is like 8. So you had 8 grams of protein. Even on the FDA guidelines, you're supposed to get 70, and you're not. So then that was breakfast. That's gone, right? A piece of chicken is 30. Okay, so now we're at 38, and then sometimes, I think, especially even as we get older, maybe we're not as hungry anymore. So we don't eat, and then we fill the gap with things. So I think having an idea of how much protein you're eating is very important, but it shouldn't come at the cost of taking other things out. I think most of us probably, I won't say undereat, but undereat good things. So then we binge on crappy things that have high calories. So we have a high calorie intake, but it ends up being a crap versus, I probably eat 2,500 minimum calories a day at least. If I go that route, if I'm marking it down. But my girlfriend, she eats like 1,100. I'm like, and then she runs. I'm like, you're just tanking, right? So everybody's different, and it depends on your activity, what you got to add in. I mean, if you're at a loss, I also believe working with a dietitian is the best way to go.
So, I know we're on the diet thing though, but, I know you mentioned before about the carbs, but I don't remember everything that was, like, what is the good carb to eat? Because we hear carbs isn't everything. Like, if we had to focus on something, is it more of like a potato type, like, what?
Honestly,
What
I
is
think
a good
whole
carb?
food.
Yeah.
If you can eat whole foods, so it's a potato, it's a sweet potato, it's fruit, it's things like, don't reach for the bread. If we wanna limit our process, because in the processing process, they have chemicals, and a whole bunch of other things that our body doesn't need. So the carb that I want you to reach for is the unprocessed carb. That's gonna be the best for your body, the easiest to break down for you.
But in terms of getting enough in your system, that's where like bread, bagels, pasta, those things, like, those are still valid things, and they'll help you boost your intake throughout the day. Like one suggestion that I have for my high school kids is, instead of doing a turkey sandwich on bread, they do it on a bagel. So they're getting more calories in that meal. But yeah, trying to get more of these sweet potatoes and fruits, vegetables, all of these things that like are actual food. But ultimately, they all break down to simple sugars in our body. It's just a matter of how quickly they're gonna break down. So, Nerds gummy clusters break down really quickly, and they taste great. They give you that quick sugar. It's great, like right before a race.
I know, it's
just
really
need
hard because
something-
you do that with the kids.
Yes,
like,
they all have.
go
these-
ahead, have that now.
Yes.
Don't have it at breakfast, but
No.
have it right before
But
the
like
race.
when they go
because
out
you
to do their
digest it.
warm up, or they're putting their spikes on before a race, they're having like a little handful of those Nerds gummy clusters. Like, just get that quick hit right now. But other than that, like, we're trying to get them to eat foods that are actually foods, and they'll take a little bit longer to break down in your system. They'll keep you feeling fuller longer, and then you pair some protein and fat with that. That keeps you feeling fuller even longer. And then, when you start to get hungry again, you eat again. So, yeah, I don't know.
I think it's understanding, like,
It's all balance.
I think you do it still. Do you do BMR, like basal metabolic?
I used that on
Yeah.
that day.
So like and it's not really extremely prevalent right now, but You know, you can know what do you break down, like how many calories do you burn sitting here? There are calculations, they're
And
okay.
it's way off what you
But
think.
it's not what, it's way off.
Never did I test someone who was like, oh, that's what I thought no,
Yeah.
no.
No, I mean, just
Like,
sitting
I
and
have a very
reading
low
what you
metabolic
eat.
rate, but I eat a freaking ton,
Right,
you know, so it's, yeah.
right, so if you, and so like when, if it's weight, or if it's weight that you're talking about diet with, it's similar, cause it does come to calories in, calories out, but the quality does matter. But if it's high school girls that are running, they're burning, they're just, it's in, it's out, it's in, it's out, like they're just shredding that energy where we might not be, because we're just not, like, you know, we're not at that stage anymore, and our basal metabolic rate does come down a little bit as we get older. So what we need does come down, but it depends on your activity level, depends on what you burn, right? So there's a lot to it, but.
There's
I
some
think-
interesting tools out there now, so I'm a data geek.
Yeah.
So I wear a glucose monitor for fun, cause I like to see.
Yep.
And it's like, I would tell the kids all the time, French fries, my blood sugar skyrockets, pineapple, and all the kids know this. It's so interesting, like what they've learned. They're like, well, pineapple's really high in natural sugar. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Stress, you know, so it's super interesting to see. And then I also, because I don't have the metabolic testing anymore, I have this Lumen, which I call it like a mini metabolic test. So you literally, it's testing the O2 in and the CO2 out. And so it tells you at that point in time, are you burning more carbs or are you burning more fat? So it tells you what your fuel source is, because at intermittent fasting, like, I cannot fast, because my body's just, I'm better off having more consistent meals. My body will go to fat burning doing that than if I'm not eating for long periods of time. Like, but everybody's super different.
Can I ask about the intermittent fasting, because my 32-year-old daughter has been doing it. I've been telling her I'm worried about her bones, you know, like having calcium getting extracted during that period of time or whatever, but can you tell me what you think of that?
I've done a lot of training in that, again, for me, you know, not as a PT, like, again, even though we're talking it isn't our scope, it's not what we learn, but
Yeah.
we all recognize it's a major part of well-being and fitness and healing. So I mean, I think where I have landed in the women's health side is probably not the best for most, just because we need the fuel, we just need it, and we need it regularly. It really ends up like, is she getting, or is the individual getting what they need nutrient-wise? You know, I mean, to some
Throughout a
degree.
24-hour
Right,
period, is that what you're saying?
exactly, so, you know, it doesn't, there's myths about breakdown of protein, like if my steak, egg, and cheese bowl that I make in the morning is 70 grams of protein, like, if, it's awesome, by the way. So if it's so good, right, so if I eat that, you know, we used to think that it doesn't break down, like, you can't use all that protein.
Yeah.
That's not true. So you can, as long as you get the fuel, right? We naturally fast when we sleep. We have naturally a time restricted pattern, you know, so if it depends on how people do it. I mean, again, I'm not the best about it. I can do 3-day fast and be fine, and I'm water, maybe a little bone broth, and that's it. It makes me feel great.
Angry.
It makes me feel great. Working out, I'm okay, but I would say that's rare. You know, again, I would say that's extremely rare, and that's not what I agree with for most people. So I think it does come down to, are you getting what you need for your body, or are you not? If you eat from 10 to 6 every day, that doesn't sound bad, right? Like, so a lot of people might not have breakfast right away and might eat at 10, and then their dinner's at 6. And then but what does it do? It takes out the 8 o'clock snack. You know, it takes out, and for a lot of people that I think I've talked about it with, you know, they're eating junk between 8 and 10 at night.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's not fasting, but maybe it's grab some nuts, or make, you know, cacao powder with maple syrup, and, you know, make a nice mixture that is a healthy fat and a healthy snack at that time. So maybe it's changing what's eaten, but, you know, eating from 10 to 6 doesn't sound horrible, and that's 8 hours of eating only. You know, so I think it depends on what your goal is, and it depends on if you're getting the nutrients you need.
And if you've done a run at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And then
What
you're
your
not eating,
exercise
and
is
you
then.
haven't eaten, then that's probably, and the studies on intermittent fasting are all done on men, not women.
Yeah, pretty much any diet.
Yeah,
Done.
so
Yeah.
throw it out.
Stacy Sims is a great name to
Yeah.
follow.
Yeah.
She's actually a very interesting story. Like, she started doing research when she was in school, and she was with all men, and they did their research behind them and like with their class, and then she had her data. They're like, yeah, we're gonna just throw this out, and she's like, why? They're like, because it's off, and they're like,
Yeah.
well, what? And she's
That's
like,
half
it's
the
off, but because
population.
they're a woman, it's different. Like, okay. So that birthed this whole professional career for her. So she has some
Yeah.
great books, and she's not a fan of intermittent fasting for the most part, and that's a great read. And she just came out with like a
Next level is
menopausal,
her.
postmenopause, yeah.
What's her name again?
Stacy Sims. Yeah.
And then, yeah.
I'll set that up.
Next
Okay.
level fitness with Selena.
Yeah.
Selena Yeager.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a great book.
And looking at, like, so at different points in your menstrual cycle, you're going to utilize nutrients differently. So in the luteal phase, the second half, so between ovulation and your period, you're not able to access the carbs that are stored in your body as easily, so you need to take in those carbs. So if you're going to exercise, if you're going out to hike for a couple hours, you have to be taking in those carbs, because your body's not able to pull them from the stores. Earlier, in the first half of your cycle, it's a little bit more readily available. But that's another thing that, it's something that you can track. You can make notes on your calendar. Okay, I think I'm at this point in my cycle and I felt like garbage today. And next day you go, I ate something before I went, I feel so much better. So you can pick up on trends just by marking it in a calendar. And then as you go through menopause and things get not really on a calendar, so so it becomes a little bit harder, but you can still try to find some trends and figure out little things that might work for a few months, and then find something else that works. for
I
a few
also
months.
think it's super interesting, I don't know if anybody cares, but I just went on hormone replacement therapy. Oh my God,
What a difference, yep.
it's insane, but I couldn't get it through my primary. I had to go to Midi Health, thank you, Celine Yeager.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they wouldn't do it, so, but, I mean,
GYN wouldn't do it?
huh?
Your GYN wouldn't do it?
I don't have a GYN.
What's the research in the osteo world?
It helps to
Yeah.
treat osteo, so again, it's that estrogen factor, so the
Yeah.
hormone replacement helps to improve your estrogen, stores, things like that, so, a lot of my women come in aches, pains, they can't figure out where it's coming from. If they try the hormone replacement, they start to feel better, and then they get better scores there. Some older practitioners will only let you be on it 10 years, and then they say, nope, you're done because it increased risk for cancer. That's been debunked, so that's not true anymore. But it's becoming more and more popular, trying to actually get it during the perimenopausal phase, so not after menopause, you wanna try to add it into your lifestyle beforehand.
And if you have trouble getting it, there are foods that you can eat that will simulate estrogen. So, fruits like apples, flaxseed, soy,
Omegas in general. Salmon.
salmon, seeds, hemp seeds, chia seeds. So you can simulate that, if you can't get hormone replacement therapy, or you're kind of waiting till that comes through, so.
So if we could go back to the cardio plan, how are we defining cardio? Like 30
Huff and
minutes,
puff.
like high intensity, like barely be able to talk
Huff
when
and
you're
puff, like
breathing?
you can broken conversation.
Okay.
Broken conversation. That is one side, and then there's, well, all right, so we're on
Go
panel,
for a
right? We're
walk
gonna discuss, so,
instead.
for me,
Yeah.
there's two sides, there's that huff and puff, which, I would say in general, that's an average. I would say, like, your regular workout is a huff and puff, like your talk test, if you're running, like you got a partner, your talk test, and that's how you know you're sustaining a good zone. There's value in going high intensity, and there's value in going really low intensity. So if you're in following the heart rate stuff, zone 2 is more like easy. And you can use 1 or 2 zone 2 days a week where your heart rate, so if you know what your max heart roughly is, it's, about 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. It's very easy, so like for me, if I can sustain 135, that's zone 2, and that's like a longer duration, I can go, right, hour and a half, or something like that. If it's high intensity, so, if it's biking, a sprint, like go as hard as you can, and then fully recover. And then go as hard as you can and fully recover. So it's not like HIIT where it's stay high, stay high, stay high, stay high. It's go as hard as you can and then recover. Sprinting, I mean, I'm a fan of sprinting for life. Don't start sprinting if you haven't yet build up to sprinting so you don't pull your hamstring. But, but like building to like a fast run where you're like all out. You gotta, again, please make sure your musculoskeletal system's ready for that. But like, so I see it as an average of like a 6 to 7 out of 10 for all the workouts of the week. Some might be a 4 or 5, some might be an 8, 9, but that average is probably in the 6 to 7 range.
Okay, so like just going for a 2 mile or 3 mile walk, that's not considered like a cardio activity?
If it's fast, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it keeps you, I mean, I think, if you have your heart rate, like, it depends on what your heart rate is, right?
Yeah.
Moving is better than not moving, right? But if it's moving with a purpose, if it's moving and you go for that, you go for that walk and it's, you get up to 130 beats per minute, right on, like, that's great for the cardio, counting toward the cardio minutes. But if you just go and you're scrolling and you look at your heart rate, it's like 82, like, that's movement. That's not cardio. So you just gotta pay attention to, if you wanna go that deep heart rate, you can go based off of breathing or like the talk test. So the higher intensity stuff, you can't talk. You can't, like if you're all out sprinting, nobody's next to me talking to me, right? If I'm doing zone 2, it's an easy conversation. I'm sweating, I'm going, but it's an easy conversation, and that mid-grade is like, hey, yep, I hear you, yep, I went to, like a little broken in your language. So that does correlate, the talk test correlates with heart rate very well.
Now, one more thing. If our goal, say this is a goal for y'all, gain muscle, strength workout before cardio, cardio before strength. Goal, gain some muscle.
I would go strength first.
I would split them up.
Do different days.
I would do different
Oh.
days.
I think that's big, everybody gets in their like routine, right? They'll go for a run, then they go in and lift. And it's like, I mean, even our kids, like, they were doing
Yeah.
a hard lift after a hard workout. I'm like, you're getting nothing out of this lift.
Yeah.
Why are we even doing this right now? So think about what your goals are each day, and whatever your priority is, prioritize that workout first, when you're fresher and so even if you're doing a fast walk and that's your cardio for the day, but that's what you really wanna focus on, then get that in, and then if you wanna do something else after, that's great, but.
I also try to pair so I'll do a heavy lift first and then I'll go for a run with a friend who's slower than me. So it helps her because I'm a little bit tired from lifting, but it also helps me so that I'm not like going all in strength and then all in on a good like fast run too. So it's pulling me back, it works for me to pair it that way, and then I know that I can really go hard in my lift first, and then I'll have an easy run, just get out and move a little bit.
I think programming is what's lost, and I think that's where, having somebody that you can chat with or a coach that you work with, that like the programming, I think, is the bread and butter of it all. Like that is what makes or breaks us. So, if you're doing 2 hard things in a day, that's a lot of stress on your tissues that could break them down in a way that causes pain or injury. Or super fatigue, and then you don't want to move for 3 days because you're toast, right? So something like your zone 2 cardio with a moderate to heavy lift is a good pairing as well. That's exactly what Megan was saying. Or something like a heavy, interval cardio day, and then that day is yoga or mobility. You know, and then you also just have to be conscious of living your life. I think Megan made that before, right? Like, you know, we get into all this, I'm like, this would be great, and then all of a sudden it's like, that's 3 hours long. Like, you know, like, we don't want that either. But like on those, you know, on the longer, you know, the higher intensity cardio days, then go lower intensity things, whether it's stretch, whether it's PT exercises, whether it's, you know, a 15-minute yoga app, or something that, you know, complements things well and fills your bucket. But still, like I always, you know, those 2 resistance days, I do think strongly that you should have a minimum of 2, potentially 3, you know, days that are dedicated to muscle build. Doesn't mean you can't do cardio those days or running friends, but it you know, I think if you have that focus, that is what, from research years ago, builds muscle, that has stayed true.
To truly build muscle tissue or bone tissue, you do need to eat what you just depleted. So a lot of people don't refuel on the back end, and then your workout literally didn't do anything for you. So that's where I hit the protein right after strength training classes, is get 30 grams of protein right after your workout so that you can actually build that bone or muscle. If you live in a state of depletion, your body will continue to pull from your bones and your muscles. So I think that's the biggest piece with all of this, with the topics tonight, is don't live in a world of depletion. We live in a high stress society, so if we add physical stressors to our bodies, we're just gonna keep kind of breaking down. So make sure you're replenishing.
So,
And sleeping.
it always says like 30 minutes, like women need the protein sooner than men do. So when does your workout really end? Like, if I get out of the pool and take a shower, then does it start from when I actually got out of the pool? But if I walk really fast to the car, have I extended the pool? Like, I seriously think about that,
Like
like,
when you're done with your workout.
then that's when the clock starts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has to be to the minute, you know, I mean,
No, but I mean, it does, it becomes
30
one of
minutes
those
to an
things,
hour.
right? If you're then going and doing an errand and you're doing this,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, now it's an hour and a half and you're home.
Yeah.
Like,
How far
you
should
need to
right.
have
Yeah, I think
something.
we.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
I said that at the December talk, it's like, I'll meet Teresa and our other friend Holly and it's like 25 minutes from my house. So I bring something with me, a granola bar, a banana, just something. Then by the time I get home and I've showered, it's like
Then
an
you
hour and a
meal.
half later, and I'll eat a full meal. But I've had something in my system, so I'm like starting that recovery process, shutting down the cortisol signal. Don't need to keep pulling from my stores. There's something going in. But yeah, then you need to really replenish everything. But yeah, the window starts when you're done.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, dairy is very
Can I ask you a question? It's not nutrition related, but stretching pre-run, post-run? I think I've seen all kinds of different advice. You might injure yourself if you stretch before your run, you should do it after your run, you should do it both times. Is there a consensus out there at this point?
Not really.
I mean, there is very old research, you know, there's very old research that says when you statically stretch, your muscle goes into a relaxed state. So in theory, if that holds true, if you stretch and you're relaxed and then you're going for an explosive movement, that doesn't necessarily make sense. You know, movement prep is kind of where I live versus like stretch before you go. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to run? Well, let's wake up your calves and let's wake up your feet. Maybe you might go into a calf stretch for a little bit, like, but it's not gonna be like a 1.5 to 2 minute calf stretch, but you might, you know, I'm a downward dog person, you know, you hit downward dog for a little bit and then get out of that, and you've given them a cue that you're coming for them, that you want to use them. There's research with running that just jump roping for 5 minutes improves performance. So just the bounce and getting like kind of some of that started, gets your heart rate up, right? If we're going deep into a movement prep, it's, you know, if you really wanted to build out a big warm up, something to wake up your feet, something to wake up your chunk, we call them pillars, I call them pillars more than core, like front, side, back. Something to move your hips, something to move your back. So you can make a movement prep and you can make it individualized, and I truly believe like 20% of workouts are individualized, and we live in the movement prep with that stuff. But really depends on what you feel with your body. I don't think there is a major consensus on that. Like, do you feel better if you stretch your calves for 2 minutes before you go run?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. You know, so as scientific as we are, and as nerdy as we are, and as geeky in research we know, you know, fair?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think there's a lot of it, so the movement prep kind of ties into the neuromuscular system, and you're getting your brain to muscle connections ready. You're sending those signals that, all right, we're about to do some work, so get ready. And it can feel like you're stretching because you're modifying that neural input to the muscle. So if you have a lot of this very tense, high neural input to your muscles, they're gonna feel very tense. And then if you can alter that through stretching, you're in a downward dog for 30 seconds. You're definitely not, you're not lengthening the tissues. You're altering that neural input. So you're helping it to relax a little bit, but you're not actually making your muscles longer. So you're stretching, but not in the way that we have traditionally thought. But yeah, I don't think there's really a consensus.
I mean, the best warm up, who here does run? Who does run there? What's your favorite warm up for running?
I walk, because I try to avoid knee injuries, so.
Okay. What's your favorite warm up for running?
Now I start, because I do with the stuff for the kids, so I never did. I used to just go out the door and start running.
Most runners are running, like they like to just
Yeah.
run easy,
Yeah.
and
But
then
now
they
I
get it,
do
you know, like
like
I'm gonna
to
run 2
do-
miles before I
you
run
know
the
what?
10-mile
And then
race.
it's the
I'm not a
neuromuscular-
major runner, so
Yeah,
that
my
baffles
glutes.
me, but.
Yeah.
Get, because I realized I never ran with my glutes, so I try to do stuff that will engage my glutes, so then I'm using my glutes when I run. So I think that's the stuff I go to.
I do some skips,
Mhm.
B-skips, and open and close the gates, get my hips moving.
Yep.
What is opening and closing the gates?
So like you
You
stand
gotta
and
do it, yep.
So you're opening,
Opening and
and then I do a little hop, so I'm getting my legs. You're opening, and then you close them.
We've all
So
done
it's
it.
just, after you've been sitting for a while, it just feels nice. And then I go run. I spend like 90 seconds doing stuff,
Yeah.
and then I'm gone.
Calf raises, squats, lunges, a couple different movements to like bring blood flow. Then go out, and if something feels sticky,
I walk,
you
I
can
do a lot,
always
I'm
redo
not a walker,
something,
not much of
and
a
then keep going.
runner, but.
But then like that bigger stretch, I would always say at the end, your blood flow is moving, you can sustain postures a little bit better then, so.
Or even just a separate time, like yoga. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely like a yoga person, like at the, I do it on my app with my kids running around. I'm not like a yoga zen person, but I like to feel, you know, like that, how it makes my body feel with a longer kind of stretch and hold. So you can do it after a run where you're warm and hitting them, or you could just have a totally separate day, you know, the whole, like, you have to stretch after you run. You have to stretch after a workout, like, that's also doesn't necessarily hold true.
I have a question. I've been been hearing a lot about people who are rucksacking, you know, trying to add weight in order to improve their muscle tone and all of that. What's the science behind that, and does it work the same way as weight training?
I use a weighted vest for my patients with osteoporosis. So it's different than strength training. So part of what I tell people is if you're a walker and you're looking to increase your bone density, wear a weighted vest. You're already doing it, so let's add some load there. It's axial loading, so the weight is distributed through your skeleton system instead of holding weights and your muscles holding some of it and bones only taking a portion of it. So I look at it as a bone loading thing. I start at 10% of your body weight and go up progressively up to like 20%.
Okay.
There's good research that shows walking daily with a weighted vest will improve bone density. And then there's good research that shows heavy lifting will increase your bone density. So heavy lifting isn't always for everybody, depending on the circumstance, but most people can tolerate the weighted vest.
So can you just wear the weighted vest around at home and then you're getting up and walking fast through the house and then sitting down at the computer?
You can.
I have one.
You can do whatever.
I wanna see that research
I
study.
want
Yeah,
it.
put it on
Like,
there.
so I don't wanna go to Orange Theory wearing a weighted vest, like, that's a little overkill.
Depends on what you're doing and where your osteo is. So if you do have osteoporosis or osteopenia, there are certain motions that put you at risk for like a repetitive overuse type of fracture. So learning how to move in the weighted vest is key. And then, just being aware of what those movements are. Like, I don't recommend vacuuming with it on. I don't recommend laundry, washing your dishes, loading the dishwasher.
Because you're heading like forward.
Yeah.
Repetitive bending type movements.
So on the musculoskeletal side too, like if you put too much weight on in the beginning, so if you don't load, like Katie was saying, like 10% to 20%, you just go right for 20%, you might pitch forward because your backside isn't hard enough. Now that's the idea of the vest, that it should be pushing down. You know, like some people are like, oh, I'll just wear a pack, like that's you're going to lose forward. So the vest itself is better, but you just gotta see what your position ends up being, because if you pitch forward, there's this thing called gravity that keeps pulling you forward, and thus you have the strength to pull yourself back. So, you know, those flexion activities, and then like, are you able to stay upright with the weight on? And then go from there. So staggering it, if it's 10% and that's too much, it's 10% for a 5-minute walk. Go home, take it off, finish your walk.
Alright, we're past time, like, I'm just thinking, like, there's another 20 topics, we're gonna, yeah!